Hello, I'm Desiree Sunshine, and today I'm going to talk to you about endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disease that affects 10% of women, or maybe 11%, or maybe 20%. A lot of women. And the reason I say maybe 11%, maybe 20% is that if you look on the internet, it says it affects 11% to 20% of women. So chances are someone you know has endo. March is Endometriosis Awareness Month, so I'm going to talk to you about my endometriosis journey. Yellow is the color of endo, so I'm wearing my yellow, I'm wearing my pineapple earrings, and I've got my cup of water, and I'm ready to tell you my unfun journey. March is Endometriosis Awareness Month, so this March I'm going to share my endometriosis journey. And it's been a long journey. I got my first period when I was 12 years old, and I remember it really well because we were going to go to Wet n Wild. And my parents are divorced. I'd spent summers with my father in Dallas, and it happened in the summer when I was with my father in Dallas, and my mom was not in Dallas, in another part of Texas. And so I had to tell my dad. It's a little bit awkward, but he was really sweet. He gave me a hug. And actually, we were all getting ready for Wet n Wild. We were all in our swimsuits. And I mean, I feel like, in a sense, it's sort of like Mother Nature sending me a message. Because I was a kid, and I was excited, and I was ready to go to Wet n Wild. And there was like that part of me that when I would get with my girlfriends and we would talk about, did we get our pee yet? We called it the P. We don't want to say the whole word, period. And so, part of me wanted to have it because, it meant being a woman. I read Judy Blume, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. That was the book of my generation. Judy Blume. Love to Judy Blume. I'm in my swimsuit, and my sister and my cousin, and we're all decked up in our swimsuit. I went to my dad's neighbor because there was this woman, there's this husband and wife that had a baby, and they were friends with us, and sometimes they'd babysit us when my dad was working. And I went and told Donna that I'd started, and she told my dad, and my dad came back with a box of pads, and he gave me a hug. It was really sweet. But needless to say, we didn't go to Wet n Wild that day. I don't think I had pain on day one, and if I think back on it, I don't know if it was my first period or my second period where the pain really came. But I know that it was a day that we were alone at my dad's. He was at work, and I remember really vividly feeling awful, like I was going to vomit. I'm 12 years old, my first or second period, and I'm crawling across the carpet because I can't walk, because it hurts so much. I can't walk, I can't stand up straight. And I crawled to the toilet and vomited. Didn't know that I had endometriosis, and it wasn't until I was 16 till I went to a doctor about it. So from 12 to 16, I suffered in silence. I was pretty convinced that it was normal. Everyone knows you have cramps when you have your period, right? So I had cramps. And the vomiting really only happened that one time. I'd feel nauseated a lot, but I didn't vomit again. The cramps had me buckled over. When I was 16, my mom took me to Planned Parenthood. We didn't have health insurance, so Planned Parenthood was my health care in my early adult life. And I was complaining about my period, and the doctor offered me narcotics. He was like, I can give her narcotics, or I can give her birth control. And my mom was like, well, I don't want her to have narcotics, so I got on birth control. Did not respond well to birth control. I remember a scene in the laundry room. I think probably some of my friends and my sister remember this as well. We were at the laundromat, we were doing laundry, and I don't know what it was, but my mom, she was saying something. She was trying to get us organized to do laundry the way she wanted us to do it, and I just exploded. like Katie goes kaboom. And I kept saying, just leave me alone. And I remember myself standing alone in the laundromat, screaming, and then looking around going, everyone left. Birth control made me crazy. And I tried several different kinds of birth control between 16 and 18. And I was all for it because, don't tell mom, but I was having sex at 16. So I was okay with having birth control. So I was all for, give me the birth control because it's gonna help me not have repercussions for other things, and maybe it'll help, I'm 16. Doctor says take birth control for my pain. Okay, cool. I take that for my pain. My period was also irregular, so getting it regular was also a goal. And birth control supposed to help with that, but instead what it did for me was it made me kind of crazy, kind of super moody, like moodier than I already was. And it made me bleed all the time. I had what they call breakthrough bleeding. It did not stop my pain. It did not help my pain. If anything, it made me have pain more often because I was bleeding more frequently. So I got off the birth control when I was 18. I was old enough to make my own healthcare decisions. And this is in the 90s when they're perfectly happy to give you narcotics, and that's what they did. They gave me narcotics. They gave me muscle relaxers. I really liked ibuprofen 800. Somebody told me about it, and I was convinced, and actually I still am convinced, that it works better than just taking 4 over-the-counter ibuprofens, which is kind of the same thing, but somehow it just seems to work better when you take it in the prescription strength type formula. And it worked beautifully for a while. That coupled with a muscle relaxer, those two together, I felt great. I was able to get through my cycle, go to school, function, get a college degree, work, pretty much survive. There were days that I couldn't. There were days I had to call in sick because the pain was just too much. But for the most part, I was able to get through life on Motrin 800 and Soma and sometimes Vicodin. Every time I went in and complained about my pain to a gynecologist, and it was always a different doctor. I didn't have health insurance. I moved around a lot, and I'm hopping from, doctors. I went to the university doctor. I went to the Planned Parenthood doctor in my 20s and throughout my 20s, and sometimes they would convince me to try birth control again, so I'd try it again, and I'd get moody again. I'd either get really depressed or really angry. No matter what it was either I would make other people miserable to be around me, or I would be miserable to be around myself. So I'm like, why am I going to take a medication that makes me miserable being me when I could just be in pain, and then at least in pain I'm not miserable being me? And back then they were perfectly happy to give me Vicodin, and muscle relaxers. So I just took those. All this time I'm going into the doctors and I'm letting them know that I'm in excruciating pain. They don't ask me specifics. They never said the word endometriosis. 10 to 20% of women. That's not a small number. This is not a rare disease, and it's not a new disease. And gynecology, taking care of women's reproductive health, is their job. Never a word of it. Take birth control, try pain, here's some narcotics, here's some muscle relaxers. Never once did they mention endo. And I get it. Endo's hard to diagnose. The only way to truly diagnose endometriosis is surgery. And laparoscopic surgery, how new is that? Well, okay, 1910, it's been around long enough. But I do think that the robots are fairly new still. They wouldn't have needed robots had they gone in and looked at me back then. And maybe I would have been able to have children. And definitely, I wouldn't have had the same kind of pain I always had. I made it through college, got my degree. So that puts me at 21, 22. Still undiagnosed. Spent a little bit of time after college in the workforce and corporate world. And I think in my mid-20s, it wasn't as bad. Yeah, they were bad. My cramps were bad. So I had an arsenal of medications plus heating pads. I started using the thermacare that you can just kind of wear in your pants. And I mean, the heating pad is my best friend. See, I've got one right here. I've got one. I keep one in my office. I keep one downstairs, and I keep one in my bed. Okay. To put my hair up. It's getting warm. What do you do when your uterus is trying to kill you? I put my hair up in a ponytail because I was getting a little hot. Because this light, it's lighting me up, but it's also kind of warm. And I think it's a little warm in my house. I'm gonna have to fast forward because it took 32 years for me to get diagnosed. 32 years. I think it's faster typically now, but some women will go 10 to 20 years before they get diagnosed with this not rare, very common disease, illness. 32 years. And I could wear tampons throughout my 20s and early 30s. I was able to wear tampons, so that was pretty helpful. I can't anymore. They hurt. They also kind of make my period stop, which is kind of weird. And then when I take it out, it's gross, but it starts up again. So I'm in graduate school and taking my same cocktail of meds. And I get through my late 20s and early 30s with a new doctor in a new city. I went to Dallas for graduate school. My new doctor didn't diagnose me. I had a new gynecologist, top notch. The woman came highly recommended, and she was all about delivering babies. And that's the thing. I wasn't getting pregnant. I wasn't trying to get pregnant. I was single, and I was trying to go to graduate school. When I was in graduate school, one of my friends was trying to get pregnant, and she was diagnosed with endometriosis. This is the first time I'd ever heard of this illness, and I would think I was about 32 years old. So this was my chance, and I missed it. So she got an ablation, and she was able to conceive after that. And she mentioned to me that I might have it, and I kind of ignored her. I was like, I don't have that. And it didn't sound like something I wanted, and obviously I don't have that. I mean, doctors would have said something if I had that. No way do I have that. I look better with my hair down. I really wish that I had Googled it, because I would have seen that it's what I had, and I would have been able to go to a doctor and say, diagnose me, please. But that doesn't happen for another 10 years after this. I'm going to graduate school. I think I said that already. I got my master's. I mean, like, getting through life with endometriosis. I think that crawling on the floor, I think that falling on the floor, folding up into yourself, crying, unable to scream because it hurts so much you can't even scream. And I remember there was a time, like, curled up in my bed, and I'm just scratching on my wall. And that was when I was in Dallas in graduate school in my 30s. It was so painful. And I'm just like, yeah, of course. I mean, my mom had cramps. I remember she had cramps. Sometimes she'd be down and want to rest, and, you know, I got it. I don't remember her ever screaming or falling on the floor or scratching the walls. And I don't know why I didn't realize that that wasn't normal. When I told the doctors that it hurt, they gave me pills. Sent me on my way. Right. So I finished graduate school, and I fall in love with this Italian guy and run off with him, and kind of starting to think I might be infertile by that point. I'm in my late 30s, never been pregnant, ever. Never. And I mean, yes, I was on the pill, but I've been on and off the pill. And yes, I was moderately safe. We were talking about getting married. I wanted to marry him. I wanted to have his children. I was starting to think I might not be able to. Well, we ended up not working out. That relationship didn't work out. And I didn't have health insurance during that time. I was out of graduate school. So when I was in graduate school, I was a teacher's assistant. and I had health insurance, and so that would have been a great time to get diagnosed and treated, but I wasn't, and I didn't, so it was going to be another 10 years before I got diagnosed. I moved back home after this long relationship and after graduate school, and I get a job teaching at a community college, and I still don't have health insurance, so I still have to go to Planned Parenthood to get my yearly exams. I've been going to Planned Parenthood off and on my entire life because women like me who don't have a lot of money and don't have health insurance have been able to get cancer screenings and even treatment for abnormal cells and UTIs and just not endometriosis. And I don't blame Planned Parenthood because I went to, like I said, top-notch doctors in Dallas, Texas. And the gynecologist I was seeing back then, she was really focused primarily on delivering babies. So they moved me to a guy that was in their practice, and he was okay, but he's never detected my endometriosis either. And we started to get to the point in time in my mid-30s, early to mid-30s, where they're getting a little less like wanting to give me Vicodin. So I'm like, wait a minute though, like just last year you guys were throwing them at me. I wanted Soma, they wouldn't give me Soma either, and I couldn't get Valium. I'm like, all of a sudden, the medicine I had been relying on to keep me out of pain is unavailable to me unless I go to Mexico, which just suddenly doctors stopped. I didn't appreciate at the time that there was an opiate crisis, and to think about it, all the pills they were throwing at me, of course there was some kind of crisis, but I mean, I didn't get addicted to them. Maybe I had a problem with the muscle relaxers, I'm not sure. Probably not, because I only took them once a month when I needed them for my cramps or if my back was really hurting. Not that often. I had to get through graduate school. I had to get a job. I had to live my life. I couldn't be on pills all the time, but I also couldn't function in the pain for those pain levels. So I needed the medicine. I couldn't get it anymore. So all of a sudden, I can't get my medicine. I did find a doctor who would give me hydrocodone, and that did help some. Let's fast forward 10 years. I am 42 years old. Give me another 2. 44 years old. I'm not. I'm older than that now. This was about 2 years ago. 3 years ago. 2 years ago. It'll be something like that. I'm 44 years old, and I have this feeling in my core that I can't have children. I'd wanted to have children with my now husband, and I just know it deep down inside that's not going to happen. And I really had to come to terms with that, plus the fact that my cramps are debilitating. After graduate school, I met my husband and fell in love, and there were things that were kind of coming up that let me know I might have endometriosis, but the thing that really happened that like really got my attention was the development of a cyst. And I was kind of convinced that I had a cyst or something going on down there before because my belly was always so swollen. I mean, I was in great shape back then. I was 36 years old, a size 8, but my belly was like, I looked pregnant, but I wasn't pregnant. And actually that was really what sealed the deal for me. I went to my uncle's funeral, and my aunt's sister saw me and asked me if I was pregnant, and I said, no, just fat. And she's like, no, that's not fat. That's not okay. That's something you need to get checked out. So thank the Lord for other women looking out for each other, because she's the one that sent that flag for me to get looked at. And so I did. I went to a gynecologist, and he found cysts, all kinds of cysts in me. And he was like, yeah, you've got tons of cysts, but we're worried it might be cancer. So he sent me to a cancer specialist. At this time, I have Obamacare. So I have to go to specialists that take Obamacare, and at the early stages in Texas, it was expensive, but it wasn't that bad. It's gotten worse over the years because Texas is like pulled out of it. So I had to go to a cancer specialist, an oncologist, and he looks at my sonograms, and he's like, I don't think it's cancer, but it might be. So, if you're going to get it removed, let me remove it so I can make sure. And remember when the doctor called me, I was in my car, I was driving, and he didn't ask me, like, are you somewhere safe where I could tell you might have cancer? No, he was just like, I'm just going to tell you might have cancer. And I'm like driving going, what? I didn't have cancer. Just get that out of the way right now. I had endometriosis. Hello, this is editor Desi. I noticed that I just dropped in a little bit about cancer and kind of didn't really explain. So let me just offer a quick explanation. My gynecologist found that my CA-125 levels were high. CA-125 is like a protein that elevates when you have cancer, also when you have endometriosis. So they were thinking potentially ovarian cancer, so they sent me to an oncologist. His intuition told him that it was endo, and he gave me two options. He said he can remove my ovary and have it tested, or we could wait, and because CA-125 only goes up if you have cancer, he says it doesn't go down. Now this is what he said, so I'm hoping that this is accurate. We could wait and see if the CA-125 levels changed at all, and in my case, they went down, and so that was enough to kind of green light me to later get excision done not by the oncologists. We felt confident that because they had gone down, that I was clear and that the numbers were indeed inflated due to endometriosis. I've also got polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I had some cysts that were troubling me at the time. The symptoms for early ovarian cancer are very similar to what we experience with endometriosis. Bloating, they say also like feeling full, and you can get those sensations with endo and endobelly as well. It is good to err on the side of caution and to watch those numbers and get those tests run. And I am very grateful that in my case, it was just endometriosis. I ended up not having Obamacare anymore because after a couple of years it got kind of expensive and it didn't cover as much, so I didn't have any health insurance when I had some of the worst pain nights of my life. I'm pretty convinced that one of my cysts either ruptured or torqued, but for 3 nights in a row I was on the couch crying, and I had Vicodin left over from something. I don't remember what. Even with the Vicodin, the pain was a 11. I didn't want to wake up my husband because I knew he would just worry about me and want to take me to the emergency room, and I didn't have health insurance, so I wasn't going to go to the emergency room. So I just suffered. I watched TV and cried for 3 nights in a row, and apparently it resolved itself after that. But as soon as I got health insurance again, I went to a specialist and told him I'm convinced that I have endometriosis. And the first specialist I'd gone to, she said, yeah, this is a chocolate cyst. Chocolate cyst is a cyst full of endometrium, the tissues that, grow outside of your uterine wall. So there's a special kind of cyst that kind of signals that you have endo. Now, why didn't the other doctors spot this? Was he looking for it? I don't know. You would think that this is their profession, that they would find this. But anyway, so she's like, yeah, you have a chocolate cyst, and that's characteristic of endometriosis. You have endometriosis, and you're infertile. And I know I told you I suspected that I had for a while, but I started crying, and I tried to blink back the tears because I didn't want to. I'm in there, splayed open, and she's got this wand up in me, and she's telling me I'm infertile. And I started crying. And she's like, well, you had to know. I'm like, have to know that it's one thing to sort of feel it in your heart, and it's another thing to have a doctor confirm it. And if you're gonna tell me something like that, maybe don't do it when you got a wand shoved up in me. Maybe let me get dressed. Maybe let me sit back. So I'm like, okay, well, you can see that I've got cysts that are ginormous, and you know I've got endometriosis, and you know it's bad. You know I'm in pain, like you have evidence of it. You know I'm not lying. So can I have some hydrocodone to treat my pain? And she's like, no, we don't use hydrocodone to treat chronic pain. Quite the turnaround from back when I was 16 to 36, when they were just showering me with them, whether I wanted them or not. So I'm like, oh great, I can't get help. So what do I do? She was happy to give me ibuprofen 800, tons of it, and I am so grateful for that, because I have had doctors also refuse to give me ibuprofen 800 recently, more than once. I've asked for it and they've refused to give it to me, and let me tell you, those days when I ask for medication for my pain and the doctors won't give it to me, and when they refuse to give me ibuprofen 800, are my worst days. Even if I'm not in pain, just knowing that doctors refuse to help me with my pain, and knowing that there's no end to this. Because if the doctors won't help me manage my pain, where does that leave me? I have to find ways to treat my pain on my own. I should talk sometime about all the things that I've tried for my pain, but during this time I started trying kratom. I had read about it. I learned that it's legal, that people use it to get off of opioids, so it is helpful and it's herbal, but the problem is that it's not regulated, and so you can get like bacteria, and sometimes I would make a kratom, I boiled it, I found out how to make it in a, safely, and sometimes I would make it and mix it with chocolate and try to flavor it, and it would work and it would help. It would actually treat my menstrual pain, but other times it would make me so sick, like either I didn't boil it enough or I don't know, but I decided to stop risking it with a kratom. But it was an effective treatment for a little while. Ibuprofen 800 wasn't cutting it anymore. It had in the past, but it wasn't anymore. My endometriosis had gotten so bad. I'd had it for 32 years, give or take. 32 years of the endometrium growing in my organs. I started researching this, and I learned that it can get up into your brain. I'm laughing now, but I was terrified. And you can imagine, like, it gets kind of like this glue, and it sticks all your organs together. And so my insides were just literally glued together. And it was worse than it had been before. So the ibuprofen 800 wasn't working anymore, and I really needed something stronger. And I was kind of disappointed, because I'm like, it's not the same as my back, which hurts every single day. It's something that hurts once a month. So it's not like I'm going to be taking hydrocodone every day. I'm going to be taking it 3 days a month. How am I going to form a habit if I'm taking it like that? I don't know. Fortunately, I finally found a compassionate doctor who prescribes to me enough Vicodin that I can take them 2 or 3 days a month to treat my pain. Oh, I can't really talk about another painkiller because it's not legal here in Texas, but I have tried it. I've been to Colorado and I tried cannabis, and it does work. And that's all I'm going to say for that. And I don't mean that it works for everyone, but when I went there, I started my period in Colorado and bought some candy and ate it, and I was like, wow, I feel better. I only had to take 2 ibuprofen. I don't have to take 4. But that's another story. But yeah, it's been proven to help women. Unfortunately, it's illegal in my state, in Texas. It's illegal. And that's kind of sad because it's really helpful medicine. All right, so I'm 44 years old, and my friend has fibroids and endometriosis. And so I'm hearing this word more and more, and I decide to go ahead and look into it. And what I find on the internet is it's me. It's my life. It's everything that I just told you. It's debilitating pain, cramps, heavy bleeding. But one thing that I never thought of, one thing that I just sort of took as a given and assumed everyone suffered like me, is it hurt to go number 2. It's kind of gross, I know. I'm not talking just a little bit of pain. I'm talking I didn't want to go. If I knew I had to, I didn't want to. And I can't even describe the pain, but it's not just, it's your whole midsection and your bottom. And it's not it's on fire. It's like being torn or ripped apart, but also a dull ache at the same time. It's just excruciating. I thought that was normal, and I'd been going like that my entire life. 32 years, maybe not that long. I don't think when I was 12, I don't think it was quite that painful, but at least since 16 on, yes, it was that bad. It hurt every time, once a month, and mostly the first 3 or 4 days, but it hurt so bad. And I didn't know that was one of the symptoms, and apparently that is now, I know that's a telltale sign. I went to an endometriosis surgeon specialist, and I told him, I'm pretty sure I have this. Pretty sure I've always had this. And he asked me about my symptoms, and when I told him that it hurt to go number 2, he was like, yeah, sounds a lot like endo. I got my surgery that summer. I got an excision surgery, and I was confirmed. That's how they diagnose you, with surgery. It's the only way. I got my surgery when I was 44 years old, and I'd gone to the woman who was a little room to grow in her bedside manner, and I was thinking about using her because she was also a renowned surgeon, but she used her hands, and the other doctor used a robot. She used a surgery clinic. The other doctor used the hospital. And the other doctor had given surgery to my friend and removed her fibroids. I ended up going with the doctor who treated my friend in a hospital, mostly because I'd read some horror stories about surgery centers, and I was also a little bit nervous about the fact that from a surgery center, you can't, if something goes wrong, you have to be moved to a hospital. If I'm in the hospital and something goes wrong, I'm already in hospital. The surgery took hours. I think it took about 4 hours. It took a long time. And then it took me a long time to wake up. I'd wake up and there's this beeping noise. Beep, 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 beep. And the nurse would ask me, are you in pain? I'm like, I am, because I was. But I was kind of only partially there, awake and kind of partially out of it. I was very out of it. And I was like, yeah, I'm in pain. She gives me a pill. I take the pill. I fall back asleep, feeling great. And I eventually woke up enough, and she's like, are you in pain? I said, yes. And she said, well, I can give you another pill, but you're not breathing on your own, and we can't let you go until you do. And I'm like, oh, and I started kind of coming to my senses a little bit. I'm like, well, oh, wow. And I started realizing where I am and what's going on. And I told her that I'm like, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt any worse than any of my cramps I've ever hurt. So, I'll be okay. And so we finally got me awake enough to where I could breathe on my own. I asked for heat, and they gave me heat to, a little heating kind of packet that you push these little metal tabs and you can activate the heat. Your sister brought me jelly beans. I remember those. I really enjoyed those. I went home, and my friend brought us Greek food. It's really good. So my husband didn't have to cook. And my husband was wonderful. He took such good care of me. And it took me about 3 weeks to get better. Maybe 4. I played Skyrim most of the time. It was pretty wonderful to be lost in the world of Skyrim. It was the first time I'd ever played Skyrim, and because of the gas, I was constantly releasing the gas, so I told my husband to go away so I could, until all the gas got out of my body, because that was really the most painful thing. And I tried a bunch of different games, but Skyrim was really the one that took me into another world, because it was painful recovering from the surgery. Let's see, about a month before the surgery, I was in this room on the floor, curled up in a ball, and my husband was just down the hall, not very far. And I was trying to shout out to him to get him to come help me, but I couldn't. I was in so much pain from my period that I couldn't call for help. I couldn't get my voice. I haven't had a period like that since the surgery. It's been 2 years. They are starting to get a little bit worse. It doesn't hurt to go number 2 anymore. That's starting to come back just a teensy bit, and I'm very afraid, very, very afraid of that. I'll probably have to get surgery again. I don't know when. For some women, it's 2 years. For some women, it's less time than that. And for some women, it's longer than that. And I'm hoping for me, it'll be longer than that. I'm 47. I'll be 47 soon. Menopause isn't that far down the line. Should be over for me soon, right? Probably one more surgery is what I'm hoping for. I went to my surgeon. He showed me pictures of everything. He said, you had stage 4 endo. We sent it in to the labs. You don't have cancer. And he was actually really shocked. He's like, that's really surprising because the last woman I saw that looked like you had it. So you're really lucky. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been growing this stuff for 30 years. So of course there's a lot in there. He also said that if he hadn't been using the robot, chances are he would have had to remove my uterus. First thing I asked him when I saw him was it in my brain? He's like, no. Was it in my lungs? No. He said it was all concentrated in my pelvic area, but it was growing on my rectum and on my bowels. And that's all been removed. And my ovaries were stuck. One of my ovaries was wrapped around itself and had like tissue wrapped around it, and then they were like glued to my uterus. Both of my ovaries are glued to my uterus, which was glued to my rectum. Thank goodness that's all detached now. So he used a robot, and he had said that without the robot, because the robot was able to kind of move and twist at other angles and kind of get back in there in the nooks and crannies, that he was able to keep my uterus and my ovaries and everything intact. But he was pretty convinced that if he hadn't used a robot, he would have had to remove my uterus at minimum, if not all of it. He also told me that I had let's see if I can say this. He also told me that I had adenomyosis. Adenomyosis. I think I'm saying it close to right. And adenomyosis is when the tissue that the endometrium that grows outside of your uterus that creates endometriosis, but when it also grows in the walls of your uterus. And he said that he couldn't get that out. So I'm still going to have pain, he said, but nothing near what I had been experiencing before I went in to see him. I still have cramps and it still hurts, but I have not been on the floor. I haven't been buckled over. I haven't been scratching the walls. If I need to scream, I can scream. I haven't been having the wind knocked out of me. I have been suffering probably what normal cramps are supposed to feel like. Maybe a little worse, but not that much. Not to where I can't function. And I can't believe that I went 32 years thinking that that was normal. I wish that gynecologists would do their jobs. I wish that they would know their stuff. Like, I don't expect every gynecologist to know how to do an excision, but I expect every gynecologist to know how to identify when a woman's pain levels are higher than what's normal. And until they do, we need to look out for each other. If it weren't for my aunt's sister telling me that it wasn't normal for me to look pregnant because I've been to doctors and they saw me, and not a single doctor seemed to think that it was weird that I looked pregnant even though I wasn't, and I'd been going around like this for years. If it weren't for her saying, no, that's really not normal, you should get it looked at, I would have gone on even longer with pain and suffering and wondering what's wrong with me. Thankfully, there are a lot of online communities and a lot of online resources to help women, and we've also got each other, and we've got to keep looking out for each other. And that's why I'm making this video and sharing my story and my journey. I do think that there's more information out there now, and that it's less likely now that there will be a woman sitting where I'm sitting, talking to you at 47 years old, telling you that she didn't get diagnosed until she was 44. I do think that in the next few years, there will be women that didn't get diagnosed until they were 44. But I think that we're getting closer and closer to the time where women are going to be diagnosed in their 30s instead of their 40s, and then hopefully in their 20s. And hopefully earlier than that. And yes, it's problematic that the only way to diagnose it is to give you surgery. And I understand that that seems extreme. But unfortunately, that is the only way to diagnose it. And you do look at a list of symptoms, and you can, from those symptoms, determine whether or not an exploratory surgery is worth it. We skipped the exploratory surgery. We went straight to excision, and there was no problem. I mean, I needed excised. But a lot of women get diagnosed with an exploratory surgery. And there are some women that think that they have endo, and they get the exploratory surgery and nothing is found. Better to do that. And yes, it's sad when you still don't have answers, but it's better to find out. I think it would have been nice for me to find out. If I had been diagnosed in my 20s, in my 30s, I might have been able to have a child. I plan to adopt. The fact that I can still adopt a child, it doesn't give me back my fertility. It doesn't give me back the option. It doesn't give me the choice. That was robbed by endometriosis. I think I've told my whole story. Let's see. So ladies, look out for each other. Support each other. Support me. Give me a thumbs up. I could use the love. I've been through a lot, and I know I'm not alone, and I guess I just want you to know that you're not alone. And if you know someone who looks pregnant even though they're not, that's called endo belly. That's what they call it. Marilyn Monroe had it. I had it. Probably gonna get it back. It's not normal to have cramps at the level that you can't function. Not normal. If you have to go number 2 and it hurts during your period, you probably have endo. You very likely have endo. Go to a specialist. Check out Nancy's Nook on Facebook. They'll point you to some good specialists, or you can just ask around. This person I went to, he's not a Nancy's Nook recognized surgeon, but he did great work. After that, he wanted to put me on Orlissa. He said that I needed to get on Orlissa, Erlipron. He wouldn't manage my pain. He wanted to, I guess he thought that the birth control would prevent it from regrowing. I think that there is a standard belief in that. Plus, they just don't want to give you pain medicine anymore. They just kind of don't want to. I guess they used to throw them at us as if they were candy, and now they went to the opposite extreme, which kind of leaves us managing our own pain and trying to figure it out on our own. And that's really not acceptable either. There has to be a middle ground. I think I'm an adult and I should be able to make my own decisions about my pain management, and if I want hydrocodone, because that's what works and that's what allows me to function, where I can take hydrocodone and function at my fullest. It doesn't make me feel anything really. Like I guess some people feel something when they take that, and that's why they get addicted, and there is kind of nice to have the pain relief. So I can see getting addicted to it from that angle, and I know that they're habit forming. I know that they're addicted, so I don't mean to dismiss that, but I believe that I have had them given to me in large numbers, and I've managed to not be addicted, and I think that I should be able to make that choice for myself. And I will not take Orlissa. I will not take Lupron. I've read some horror stories about it. A. B, we already talked about me and birth control. Not a good mix. So I'm just waiting for menopause to save me from all of this. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have a story to tell, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And this is kind of new for me, kind of reviving my channel and making something of it. So we'll see where this is going to go. Happy March. Happy Endometriosis Awareness Month. April is Endometriosis Awareness Month. It's a disease I have, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. Maybe in April I'll learn. So maybe I'll talk about that a little more, but honestly, I don't really know what to say about it, except that I had never heard of it until I was diagnosed with it, and the internet says that it affects 20% to 65% of women, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care of yourself, and take care of each other.